My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your F.A.T.E.
Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I have Ellen Kohn. She is an intuitive animal communicator. She's a healer, and she has a new book out called Be Like the Wind, 3 Equines Channel Spiritual Light. I'm very excited to bring her on the show. Ellen Kohn, welcome to your F.A.T.E, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Christy.
Thank you for taking the time to be with me today. I really appreciate it. I read your book and I found it to be fascinating. And I am all ears about this amazing story of you and 3 horses. It's a channeled book. So why don't we first get into your capacity to communicate with animals and your spiritual journey? Can you tell us a little bit about how you learned that you had these intuitive gifts that allowed you to communicate with animals? I find it so fascinating.
Sure. Well, the healing piece started when our youngest had a 2-part hip surgery, and I met a healer who worked with people with healing touch, which is hands-on energy. She said, you need to train in the animal program. We have all these animals. So I did. That led to Reiki, and things kept unfolding. And I got drawn to one class called Heal Yourself in the psychic arts. And that sent me down a 7-year road of studying and weekend workshops, extremely intensive psychic training. One day, a friend of mine, she was a client friend, said, ask Toby, her horse, asked Toby how he hurt himself. She and I had been in a clinic, and we were both assuming when he spun around in the clinic, he hurt his back. But I heard him say, I hurt myself in turnout, which was completely out of my consciousness. So then I began asking questions. Where did that come from? I didn't know he was in turnout. So then people said, you really heard it. You need to study animal communication. So I did. In 2007, I said, all right, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to tell everybody I'll talk to your animals for free. And I created I wasn't charging money, journal after journal. It turned out I could see what the inside of their houses look like. I would say, you have a yellow and white striped wallpaper on your kitchen. It was kind of mind-blowing because I wasn't expecting it. So that became what we call remote viewing. And that enables me to track lost animals, which is not always successful, Christy, for many reasons. I'm going to tell your listeners that, first of all, the animal has to want to be found. Second of all, they have to get over whatever fear of where they are in hiding. Did they do something wrong? Did they run off? Did something frighten them? Are they mad at my owner's boyfriend? All those things, they have to want to come out, and then they have to want to go home. If they can. They may have been hit by a car and killed. They may have cats will find new homes. They don't want to go home to the house with the barking dog next door because they have no peace. So there are many, many reasons with the remote work that it may or may not have what we would say success, but we often get closure.
So you, as a child, did you feel like you had any extra sensory perceptions? Were you into spirituality? Was this something that just you came upon later in life? Or like how, because you seem to, I don't know, I find it to be amazing that you developed this capacity to communicate. And if I could learn to do that, I would love to be able to do what you do.
You could, anybody can, but for me, it was not early in life. It was in my 30s and 40s, mostly in my 50s, that I started really finding that passion for it. So I would say spirit found me. I was always sensitive and I always had a draw to the animals and I always felt them, but I didn't understand. I was a kid and I was riding at a riding stable and I had this one horse, Charmin, and they were talking about retiring him and I felt so uneasy. And then I found out later he might have gone to the glue factory in those days. But I didn't have the psychic connection I have now. I was putting a saddle on my newer horse yesterday and I said, "Do you like this saddle?" And I heard, "It's my favorite." And I stopped and I said, I didn't ask him, "Is this your favorite saddle?" So the yes might have been debatable. I heard something slightly different than my question. That's how you know.
Are you always wanting confirmation or trying to get proof that what you're hearing is real and accurate? And do you ever find yourself second guessing your own capabilities at this point?
Yeah, I still do a little bit with the lost animals. I had one a couple days ago and the cat told me he was killed by a truck. And the owner said, "I don't believe it. I'm going to keep hoping." And I said, "Look, I could have heard it incorrectly, but I kept muscle testing and dowsing with pendulums and everything to take it out of my mind into the spirit realm." And I kept getting, "Yes, he died. Yes, he died." So I had to tell her because it's been a few weeks and he hasn't come home and no one's seen him. It's possible he's still alive, but I don't think so. So at times I do. But then I've learned also on the flip side of that, if you don't tell them everything and then they come back and say, "Oh, I'm going to make something up." My dog gets hiccups all the time. And you had heard the dog say that, then you're withholding information. So now I just say it, and I'm way more confident that if it doesn't make 100% sense, they're going to get a message either way. Something's going to resonate.
You do have a business called Enlightened Animals where you communicate, you do in-person healing, you do remote healing sessions. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you heal animals? And if you have any good stories to tell, I'd love to hear them.
I do have a few good ones. So I do Reiki,
Oh.
and you can do Reiki remotely. My main system is called Meridian, and it's kind of scientific. It's got charts and cards, and you put an engagement card between the animal or person's name, and then you use the pendulum to dowse off the charts. And you can really get some good information about health and emotions and all this stuff. You can even ask if the animal's trying to transition. So that's in series of 9. And I have a dog client here. I haven't met them in person, but their little rescue poodle, he's had 7, and she keeps emailing me, "He's now doing this, and he's not as afraid in the dog park." And I made her a blended remedy, which I also do with pendulums, where I douse a box of 100 crystal and flower essences, and I come up with a custom blend for that client. I use them all the time for mine. And then they put it in their water, they put it on their fur, and they say an affirmation like for healing or for getting along with your brother or something. And those work. They're amazing. They are mind-blowing because they're energetic.
It is. The more and more I dance in the direction of this, I'm on my own spiritual journey. I'm learning and I'm going through my own transition in life. But I'm always just utterly amazed at how magical life really is when you start tapping into things like intention and affirmations and energy. It's a never-ending ball of magic. Every single, it's so
true. And I know the name, what your F.A.T.E stands for. And I think, when we're skeptical and we're doubtful, we're closed. And when we believe, we're open. And then, as you just said, the magic happens over and over again to where it just doesn't stop.
It's true. Life does start becoming magical.
And you've,
Mhm.
I have such a, I have more of a sense of peace in my life, and I have much less fear in my life. There's been all kinds of transitions, but this episode is not about me. Okay. Let's get into your book a little bit. And the concept, from what I understand behind the book, is this book was actually channeled to you by 3 different horses that you have had throughout your life. You had Billy, Monty, and Romeo. And can you tell us a little bit about how the origins of this book and how it came about?
Yes, I was out riding in the neighborhood in Santa Fe, and I jokingly said to Monty, "What is your life advice today?" And the words, "be like the wind," came blasting. I heard him say, "be like the wind." And I grabbed my phone and I wrote it down like, what is this? And I kept asking and I kept getting, and I'm like, I have to write a book. He's telling me to write this in a book. And then, since you asked, Billy has been gone for a while. I started thinking, oh my gosh, I had the most amazing spiritual awakening probably with Billy when my dad died. That day, I went to the barn in Florida where he was boarded, and we had to go out a gate. He never wanted to go out that gate alone. He would protest. I would turn around. I would give up. Open the gate. Wait a minute. He's walking through the gate. He's carrying me. He doesn't want to turn around. He knew. He knew that my dad died. He knew that I was grieving, and he took care of me in a way he had never done before. But that came in hindsight. That wasn't in the moment. I thought it was weird, but when writing the book, I was like, oh my gosh, Billy's part of this. Because he was the funniest horse ever. He had a huge sense of humor. He could make you laugh in a split second. And he was part of what I called the triage in the book, the triune, where the 3 of them had a pre-planned thing. Romeo is still alive. He's here. And he keeps evolving into the biggest heart of beings you could ever know. He's all heart. But none of them really started out like that in their own lives. They all had their own journeys of trauma and sadness, and they came about.
It's true. And each one of these individual horses have trauma in their lives. They all had adversity that they had overcome, and you kind of came in and saved a lot of them at the right time. Another interesting aspect that you talk about in the book, that some of the horses, I believe Monty, you have had more than one lifetime with. Why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about that?
Yes. He died very suddenly in 2017. He was bright and shiny, big black horse. The next day, he wasn't eating. The third day, we got blood work done, and I took him down to the vet. He was bleeding, and they said, we've never seen blood like this. So she came back that afternoon and put him down in my field, and it was such a shock. It was so sudden. Those are the worst, my opinion, when you have no warning. You're not ready. You might have a really old dog, but you have warning and you can care. And we have one who's 13 and a half, and, she's now deaf. So we're luckily we can be with her and think like that with that, here today, gone tomorrow. So it took me possibly 2 years to get over that because of the suddenness. And Romeo went into shock because they were best friends. And I kept doing readings with a friend of mine. We kept trading and trading. One day I saw it looked like those paper dolls that as a kid you pulled. And I said to my friend, oh my gosh, these are past lives. I think I'm counting 9. And I said, that is why I have been so stuck in my grief. So I had to go dig around in that to have a little more closure why this relationship was so deep and didn't feel like we'd finished in this lifetime. But we had, because he said, if you knew how sick I was, you would have gone crazy trying to save my life. I asked him over and over, how come you didn't warn me? Why did you have to leave so suddenly? said, because you needed to step up. You couldn't use me as your protector anymore. He felt like a big brother in this lifetime. I always viewed him as my protector.
Do you, since you have the capacity to communicate with him now, do you still have the capacity to communicate with Monty if you...
Yes.
Does
Yes.
that heal you faster or make your grief less? Or is it just not having him here?
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps. And it turns out the newest horse looks a lot like him. He's black with a white blaze. And he's also very traumatized. So I get these moments of pause where I say, oh, he's so much like Monty was when I first rescued him. Monty was starving. He was like skin and bones. And that was a hard one. But he really became, eventually, a child could ride him. He was so incredible.
You know, animals really do have the capacity to turn around in their mental well-being. It does take a certain kind of energy and love and care for that. But one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because I do feel that if people really started understanding the depths of emotions that animals have, that they are sentient, emotional beings that have every single emotion we do. They have family bonds, they grieve, they have joy, they're sad. I mean, they have everything that we have, and they are conscious, living beings here with us. And I'm really hoping the future of humanity does start acknowledging the fact that we are not the only conscious beings on this planet. They are conscious, they have emotional bonds, especially when you get up to primates. I mean, elephants, dolphins, like they're so smart and they're so much more intelligent than we would ever give them credit for.
Well, and then if you believe, like I do, in the collective consciousness and the quantum, we're all connected and we're all one. So we need to heal that abuse and neglect, and we need to heal the earth, or it's just gonna be a disaster. And there are really phenomenal international rescue groups that are rescuing the elephant orphans and the baby giraffes, but maybe not at a pace that's really gonna sustain. I don't know. Sometimes I read it, sometimes I don't. I was reading about the red wolves yesterday. There are 20 left in the whole world. And there's one they follow named Hope. And her mate got killed by a car. And then one of her sons started helping. He also got killed by a car. But then she remated with a captive red wolf that was, released into the wild. So I just take these huge deep breaths, like, please.
I used to get very, very emotionally depressed about when I used to think about the other species on this planet. And I had to start seeing it through a different lens, because I like to just now hold space and love and light my heart for everything in hopes that things will get better. Because I used to walk around like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. The weight of the world.
Same with me.
Like I just couldn't understand why we had to do what we do. And I hate to say this, but there's a little bit too many of us and there's a little bit too few of the other species on the planet. And I think that sort of needs to balance out. I don't know how that happens, but so speaking of skin of their teeth,
she wants to be heard.
This is Maggie.
Hi, Maggie.
But I will just try and keep her here for a minute. I don't know what you're, I don't know. She never does this. Weird. But anyways,
I think she wants to be heard here.
Heard, Maggie?
First she barked, then she kind of gurred, like, don't leave me out. I need to get louder
She's
here.
my best friend. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, you should come on over to YouTube, because she is she's about as cute as dogs get, my friends. She's just a showstopper, this one. In your book also, you talk about the fact that humans and animals, that particularly horses, can have soul contracts. And why don't we let people know what that is and how that happens? What are soul contact? I didn't actually understand it. I did not. This was new information for me.
Yes. So when you pick an animal, whether you adopt and rescue or you get a purebred dog or cat, you are entering into a sacred contract with them. And often I think your listeners would agree, maybe they go to pick one dog, but they come home with another. So this is about spirit joining you in this sacred soul contract for the lessons you're going to help each other learn. It might be moving through fear. That's what Monty did with me. And Billy was about humor and fun and play. And Romeo is about love. Not that we all don't have love, but the love just keeps unfolding with him, and trust. Because Romeo was a captured Mustang off the range when he was 2. So he had a huge trauma watching his family be divided, be trampled, and never see them again. And in particular, Mustangs are very, very, very family-oriented horses. So every dog, every cat, and even our partners and friends, I believe, we have contracts with them and our children. That's my personal belief. So this is so fascinating because you might wonder, well, why did this dog come into my life? It happened with us when one of they're called pot cake dogs from the Bahamas. It was another sudden death. He died very suddenly. We went to surprise our son for his birthday. He had to get on a plane that morning. And we see 2 dogs in New York that look exactly like him. And I said to my husband, let's go online in Colorado and look. And we find Pepper. Pepper is not Simon, but for sure Simon sent Pepper because Pepper is exuberance. And his contract with us is remember to be joyful. Every day he's the goofiest, funniest. He's challenging in some ways, but he is an exuberant being. And that's why he's here with us.
You know, I am under the impression now as well that we all have soul contracts with people we compact with before we get down here of who we're going to be with and how it's kind of going to be designed. But I never thought about my animal relationships that those were also designed around predestined experience. You know, like I just find that to be fascinating. In the book, the horses, your Billy, Monty, and Romeo, a lot of their notes, their discussions are kind of overtures to humans about where we're at in our development and how we are as a society. And there's some really profound messages from spirit realm to us. Can you go into a little bit of that's from the book?
Yeah, one of the parts is about rage and anger, and it's called the fire within. And I mean, I can attest to have at times feeling that, like you were saying, you couldn't work at the, race or with the horse trainer anymore because of the abuse. It's that rage. It isn't necessarily related to what's happening on earth, but it's related to ourselves and our peers and our relationships. So there's this anger that needs to be tamed in a way or just managed so we can be productive and we can be spiritual and get out of ourselves, get out of our little selves into our bigger universal self. So that's one piece. And then this kind of Sisyphus pushing the rock up the mountain and it falls. You keep trying to climb higher and higher and higher and achieve more and more and more. For what? You could just be. And then you can walk the talk and then you can be the best version of yourself by whatever it is. Do your best and don't compete in the world because that's creating jealousy and rage and competition and backbiting and all the things in society in that world that are destroying
everything. I mean, I will say the over competition that we are currently under on this planet is pretty epic. I feel like we have lost what we're supposed to be doing here and who we're supposed to be and how really interconnected we are. And we are just pre-programmed to be like this, to get on this rat race and run until we die. You know, there is a lot to be said for a new paradigm of over-consuming, overconsumption, materialism. All of that is really starting to make our world crumble quite quickly. I feel like it's happening faster than ever now with the way it's going. So if you had to say what really was the real reason behind writing this book, what did Billy, Monty, and Romeo really want to pass on with you writing this book?
A lot of the spiritual messages that are in the end part of the book about be still, go within, look at the silence, connect to your guides and angels. I think it was more a validation of we can speak. You can look at it through our eyes. And yeah, you can read lots of self-help books, but the horses, they're supreme healers, at least to me. So maybe they're more believable, maybe not, but I believed it enough to say, I want to write what you guys are saying. Since it started out, be like the wind, and then it kind of ends with just let everything go through you and you'll be so much happier. I mean, it's a big message in surrender.
Yes.
Really. Because the more you surrender to all the stuff and the hassles and the problems, which we all have on different levels, the more you go with it, you can keep going as opposed to crumbling.
I was really surprised at how deeply, profoundly spiritual they are. Like, I know that animals have emotions, and I think that they have family bonds, and I think that they're much more intelligent, but the level of wisdom and the level of profound spiritual within them was something that really surprised me. And I was not expecting that from the book. It's just how wise they were.
Yeah, they really are. And they've been around a long time. And I know you had asked me about the Equine Council. Well, it was kind of that question, like, why the three of you and why me? I'm just one little human being. Well, they were chosen to come forth at this time through a human that is very spiritually motivated. I don't have the answers and I don't have a perfect life, believe me, but I try. And I try every day to stay as close to the spirit world as I can. I joke around with my friends and my clients like we could be in bliss all the time if we didn't have to deal with the physical world, because the spiritual world is magical. But they were chosen, and then somehow through Monty, they said, all right, we're going to do this. And in the book, it says, it took a life of its own. I could not organize the book. And I finally gave up, and I'm like, I'm just going to write what I hear.
That is so fascinating. Do you also channel, do you have other pets that you channel at all? Do you have any? You do?
Yes. So we have a donkey she's technically called a burro. She was a wild burro in Arizona, also captured by the Bureau of Land Management, the government. And when I went to get her, I had my eye on a brown one. And when I got there, I'm like, oh my gosh, she is the one. And she's helping me write a book about her and what it was like being on the range. And turned out she was pregnant. We didn't know. So she had her foal here, and her little filly is now 3. So I have a lot of conversations with her and our cats, especially one cat who I'm on my 3rd round with him. He's the second reincarnation of a cat that came from a prayer, another joke many years ago where I was walking from our house in Colorado across the street because we were building a barn. I looked up and I jokingly said, okay, God, now I need a barn cat. And 2 days later, there was a black and white cat in my neighbor's barn. I didn't put it together for about a day. Like, what's going on? Oh, that cat's a good mouse. He wouldn't let me leave. He was grabbing my leg and biting me. And I'm like, all right, I'll bring you food. I'm like, wait a minute. I think God just answered my prayer. I had to put signs up. I had to go through all the local rescues. Somebody claimed the cat. No one claimed him.
I mean, that's some alignment right there. That's some synchronicity right there. Yes, it is, ladies and gentlemen.
And then when he died, I went looking for the next incarnate. I got Marco. Marco was the third pet we've had that died suddenly. We had Monty, we had Simon, and we had Marco. And one of our kids was training in breath work, and we were doing a practice. I don't know what it was, but I felt like I left my body. And because I could kind of feel like I was floating, and I saw another black and white cat, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I talked to him, are you coming back as a black and white cat? Yes. So I went looking, and now I have this Pippin, who is like line by line, the three of them could be one. And he's the best yet, though. He's the funniest, talkative. And, but I know that's a soul contract that keeps going for some reason.
I mean, you must have one of the things that I have found through journeying into spirituality is that I don't fear death anymore. You must have a different perception of what it is to die now. You must know that,
Yes, I do.
that I think is the biggest gift, maybe, that
because people ask me, well, what kind of religious upbringing did you have? And I say none. Zero.
Yep.
Zero. Not even discussion, is there a God? Nothing. So it's all come from experiences, Christy. It's experiential when you say you can't make this up. You cannot make it up. If you're talking to an animal or a person who's crossed and they give you evidence of something, I had a pink ring that I wore on my pinky till the day I died, and you see that pink ring, you're talking to that person in the spirit world or that animal. You just can't make it up. It doesn't work that way.
It's kind of good that you weren't pre-programmed with religion. It may have prevented you from being as open to this as you were going into it, because I know a lot of people really fear losing their tribe. They fear losing that sense of, I think a lot of people feel comfort thinking that their particular version of God, whatever that is in their own religion, is watching over them or helping them, and they don't want to lose that feeling of that comfort of having that person that they pray to. I think that if people more understood that all of that lies within, all of that is within, I think it could be transformative for our entire planet.
And when you watch the NDE, the near-death experience videos now, people are getting courageous and they want to share. And in years and years ago, they don't want to say, well, I was on the operating table and I was floating and I saw the woman wearing the green sneakers and I heard the surgeon say, hand me the scalpel. And when she wakes up, she tells them and they're shocked. But now they're not afraid to speak up and say, I died and I came back. So that's the thing. We're all getting more confident, searching, seeking with this enthusiasm that, wait a minute, this cannot be all there is.
Yes, that's exactly why I started this podcast, is because I am convinced that we really don't know our true history. We really don't know fully what this 3D reality is, what we're capable of, what consciousness is, and how powerful we really are. And through having people on the show, I have learned so much about spirituality, who we are, what the nature of our abilities are. And I think that
there is this ginormous movement that is slowly percolating out there that is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, to the realization that we are all connected, that consciousness is everything, that everything is energy, and that we are all here for a higher purpose. And it's not to try and make as much money as you can before you die. You know, it is so much more, you know?
It is. It is.
Well, yeah, let's hope that we all get there eventually. You know, I'm hoping in our lifetimes we have a big awakening of sorts, and more people come to realize what we are. You mentioned the Equine Council of Elders. What is exactly the Equine Council of Elders in the book?
It is, I would say, formed of unicorns, special horse breeds, even eohippus that came together, kind of avatars, let's say, and they kind of oversee the equines globally. So they are supervisory, they give guidance, and in the case of the book, the way it was explained to me is they chose these 3 horses to kind of continue to pass the spiritual baton, starting with Billy, then Monty, because again, looking back at how Monty came into my life when Billy was getting old, and then Romeo came in to be with Monty, like they were teaching each other along the way, and they were sharing messages about how to be with a human, and a human that was so sensitive that they could teach me and they could talk to me and they could help me be a better person. So the Equine Council is kind of like an angelic, backdrop for we got your back. We're watching the horses and we're helping the horses help the human.
Do you think that other species have councils? Like, would you think there'll be a elder bear council or an elder? Yes.
Oh, I do. And one of my clients that I work with, I've been working with for 8 years, had a racehorse. And I believe from the communications that horse has shared with us, he may be part of that council. He is so tuned in, and he gives us the most amazing messages that I can reach him anytime and get a message. And I think he might have been in that council in the day in another form, because he's just mind-blowing, that horse. And he's not here anymore. He's in the spirit world.
I mean, that's probably the biggest surprise for me. I'll say it again, that I didn't know how deeply spiritual animals were and how deeply connected they were to Earth. And I mean, just so profound and wise, way more wise than we are, by the way.
They are our teachers. I tell people this. Remember, he or she is here to teach you and to help you learn.
If you're listening, you got to listen, though. I think there's so many distractions on this planet that people don't really tune in or listen to what they really need to be listening to. And many missed opportunities. I've had them, and most of my life until I had my own awakening, many missed opportunities. So,
But I kind of view it that one thing led to another, like you used the word synchronicity earlier. It gets us to where we are now. And it doesn't mean we're behind, like that competition thing again. I'm not as far along as you are, and, you're better than I am. No, but look what you're doing now. You're broadcasting.
Yeah.
So maybe in your world, you're making up because you're getting the word out there. I think that's pretty cool.
I'm trying,
Sharing it.
it's a slow burn, but I'm like, the universe seems to be supporting me in this very much. So I am going to continue to dance in this direction until I'm not, In the book, one of the other cool things that I noted was you talk about signs that are beyond the veil, like chills and orbs and can you tell us a little bit about the signs?
Yeah, one of the main ones for me is feathers. And in the worst moments, I'll say, please give me a sign or something, or I'll say help. And it's almost like within minutes, I'll find a feather in the weirdest place. here's an example, and I'll talk if you want me to in a little bit about my nonprofit. In 2019, Hurricane Dorian decimated Freeport on Grand Bahama. And we were heading out. I had had some pretty serious health issues. We were going on the first vacation in years. And I didn't know if my colleague in Freeport was alive or dead. I knew they were flooding. And it turned out they were all up in the ceiling to survive the flood. It killed 200 dogs.
Oh, no.
Anyway, we get to our destination and there was a ground floor bathroom. And I sit down, I look out the window. There's a feather sticking up in the grass, straight up. You just don't see feathers like perpendicular to the ground. And I was just about to cry because I knew everything was all right. And so those feathers alone have just been a huge support. Wherever I go, whatever I'm doing, I'll find a feather saying to me, we're here. You're not alone. So that's one thing. And there are so many others.
Do you have any ability to communicate with your spirit guides, or do you just communicate mainly with animals?
I talk to them all the time. I do. And I had a feeling you were going to ask me this because there's a funny thing that keeps coming in when I'll say in my head, like, da, 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 and I'll get an answer and they go, but you already knew that. And so now I say, but I already knew that. Like, I'll get this funny spiritual answer like, darn, but you knew that already. And why were you asking? I'm like, okay.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about you? You do have a nonprofit, the Kohn Foundation. How did that begin, and what are you doing now out there in the world?
So when our kids were little, we lived in Florida and we used to travel over there. And there's a spot at the tip of Grand Bahama called West End. It's very, very impoverished. So you have to go from the airport in Freeport and you have to pass a lot of sick, dying, starving animals. And I would come back time after time and I couldn't talk. People would say, what'd you do in the Bahamas? And I'm like, And then I said one day, if I don't do something, it's going to crumble me. I can't. So I got a hold of this same woman in Freeport, said, I'm going to try to help you. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to try. And again, I was training in healing touch and I wasn't charging. And I would tell people, if you want to make a small donation, I'll send it to the Bahamas. I remember my first was like $700. And then I got it together and I started a nonprofit. I went through the IRS and people said, you're never going to get it through. It went through in 8 months. That was phenomenal to get the 501c3. And so many hurricanes have gone through since, and every time it raises money because now people know about us and it goes straight to the animals or the kids. But the kids, I have one private source, maybe running out now to give scholarships, but we've helped about 30 kids get through college. It's not huge, but I run it by myself and I don't pay myself any money. And I feel good that I helped in one teeny spot in the world try to make life better for the people and the animals. And the book, all the proceeds from Be Like the Wind are going to go to the shelter.
Well, I will definitely put how people can contribute to the Kohn Foundation in the show notes and let people go ahead and contribute themselves and donate to your organization. I know how you feel.
Thank you.
When I go into places where, whether it be a third world country or wherever, cultures have different feelings about animals. The vast majority of Americans really, we spend a lot of money of our pets here. We're a very wealthy country. And then you go into other countries that aren't quite as wealthy as ours, and animals really do suffer quite badly. So the fact that you went there and you saw the animals suffering and you decided to turn that into a foundation, I commend you. And I think that is so, it's so important because there's no shortage of suffering, starving, abused animals out there. There just isn't. And I don't know. it's overwhelming to think about sometimes, between that and the fact that we're losing a lot of our most beautiful species too. It does get overwhelming. There's just so much of it out there. So
Yes, I hear you and I agree with you. And sometimes I say to myself, I can only do what I can do. I'm one person, but I'm not going to give up and I'm going to keep trying. So when you get me started about the helicopter roundups in, western states with the Mustangs, I'm very adamant about that subject and others, and where there's cruelty, because I too cannot understand or see it. And children around the world, it's the same thing.
It's really overwhelming. It's hard to wrap your head around anybody that can do that. Or I personally don't understand how anybody could see an animal or a child suffering and not do something about it. And anybody that abuses an animal, I just can't even fathom what's in their heart or mind or anything. I just don't understand it at all. It's bizarre. Okay. How about I bring my little Maggie on for a moment? And all right, this is Maggie. Maggie used to have, it's okay. She used to have a best friend named Mr. Pickles. And for 9 years, Maggie and Mr. Pickles were the best of friends. And I lost Mr. Pickles 2 years ago because of he had health problems and he had braces on his legs. And I even wrote a book about them and their friendship, and because it was just like so special. And she helped him walk again with braces, and it's really just a heart-warming, charming story. But Mr. Pickles will be gone now, 2 years coming up this February. And she's on her own and she's my best friend and I take her everywhere. And I love her, love her, love her. But I don't know if she is ready to have a companion or if she's happy just being me and Maggie. Or is Maggie happy without Mr. Pickles? Is she doing okay?
I did get a hit on the soul contract, since we were talking about it, that together she did help him hugely at that part of his life and your life. And now it's her time with you. And when you first asked me, before we even came on the air, I felt this beaming from around her heart with you in there. And I think she's basking in it. I think this is her time with you. And remember, a few minutes ago, first she barked, and then she gave a growl. And I interpreted that to mean as she wanted to be heard today. And she wanted everybody to know that she, in her little body, could say, hey, listen to me for a minute here, which we're doing, because she also feels like a big soul. She might have a little body, but I feel like she's got huge energy. And yes, they all do. So it sounds like one of those pat answers, but this is about enveloping you when you need it into her field. So yes, she's a small physical self, but her energy is very big and very enveloping. So I don't think she's unhappy. And I'm not sure if you got a little puppy or a rescue or something, that it might not detract from this one-on-one right now, because I feel like she's also helping with your podcasting.
I mean, I will say this. Mr. Pickles needed so much attention from me because he wasn't a healthy animal and he was on braces, and I had to make sure he wasn't in any pain. I had to make sure he was drinking and eating, and he got a lot of my time. And I didn't realize that I was really putting Maggie on the back burner a lot for those years he was sick. And I was always like, well, Maggie's fine. I got to focus on Mr. Pickles. And he was always with me and he was always in my lap and I was always kind of catering to him. And when we didn't have Mr. Pickles anymore, I think for the first time I realized, oh, I really did not neglect. She was always well cared for and loved. but I wasn't as close to her as I was to Mr. Pickles.
Mhm.
And now, especially the last year of my life, her and I have really bonded, and we are so close. And she's my best friend, and I just love her so much. And I just want to make sure she's happy. But I,
She is.
I
She is.
definitely, we have just bonded, and she's the light of my life. She really is. And Mr. Pickles was also quite a big personality, and he was a light. And Maggie is probably the sweetest soul I have ever met. She really is just as sweet as can
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
Oh,
Do you ever does she feel like a sister in some ways
she
at
does.
times?
She really does. She feels like
Mhm.
my best friend, my best girlfriend.
Now I'm getting a hit that I think you and she may have been sisters in a previous lifetime. I really got a strong sense, and it doesn't, looking at the two of you, feel like dog and human. It feels different
It
to me.
feels different to me too. Like I have an
Mhm.
incredible a bond with her, a deep, deep bond.
Mhm.
Like she's 10 years old now, and she's gonna have to live at least another decade. There's just I can't imagine my life without her. I really can't. Oh,
Yeah.
Maggie.
Yeah.
All right, say goodbye, Maggie. That was fun.
Bye,
Bye.
Maggie.
Well, Ellen, that was a wonderful way to wrap up this episode of Fate. I really want to thank you for all you do for animals and the foundation. Your book is incredible. It is the first book I know of its type that is channeled
Mhm.
through you from their perspective. It is a great
Mhm.
read. It is, I hope as many people out there pick it up and read it as possible. It will touch their hearts, it will open their minds, and it'll make them realize just how profoundly wise and deep animals are, so much more than we will ever give them credit for. There's just so much going on with them that we would never have even imagined. And I want to thank you for being a part of the show. In the show notes, I will put where they can pick up the book. Amazon is a
Okay.
great spot for you.
Yes. Yes, actually today it got released in the
Oh my
US
gosh.
today. So it's no longer pre-order, it's ordered time, and that will help the algorithms because these publicists love their numbers, going back to
Oh,
what we were
yes.
saying, like, would it matter if 5,000 copies sold or it helped one person? No.
Yes.
If you learned about soul contracts by reading the book and it opened you to a new way of looking at you and Maggie, hey,
Yeah,
there's the magic.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Also, pick up the book. It goes to the Kohn Foundation. You're going to be helping animals and
Mm-hmm.
children, and that in alone is worth um the book in itself,
Sorry.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's going for walking the talk of helping the
Yes.
greater good.
And that's what it's all about, folks, helping the greater good. We need more people like you.
And thank you
Thank
too.
you. What
Oh, thank
I
you,
mean, it was been a
Christy.
pleasure.
I'm
We
sure we'll
will
be
be in
in
touch for
touch.
sure.
Okay.
And I will put in the show notes the book. I will put the Cone Foundation. And guys, pick up her book. It's a fantastic read. I've never, ever experienced anything like it. So do it today. It's out in the
Thank
States.
you. Thank you very
Thank you
much,
so much.
Christy.
Alrighty, gang. That is a wrap on this episode of Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Journey well. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Alrighty, guys. That is a wrap on this episode of From Atheism to Enlightenment. What did you think of that? I learned a few things. I had no idea that the human spirit and the animal spirit had soul contracts. I had no idea that humans could channel something as in depth as a book that would translate messages from beyond the veil from the animal spirit world to humans. I mean, it's a leap for sure. I'm wondering what y'all thought about that episode. It is hard to accept that that's even a possibility or that that is even happening. And you might say to yourself, that's nuts. There's no way she channeled that book through her horses. It's just not possible. That's one take. You could walk away with that kind of take. But I encourage you to pick up the book and read it and understand the profound messages to humanity that animals have and how they really are a part of our spiritual journey. And there's magic everywhere, gang. I am learning about these concepts as I bring them to you. So even for me to speak with Ellen, as much as I love animals and I love my dogs and I have been an animal advocate my whole life. And I've always thought that they had a deeper sense of self, a deeper um, personality, emotions, all of that I've known about animals since I was a child. I just had an affinity for them. I had an innate ability to connect with animals. It's where I felt most comfortable. I love doing shows where I'm talking about animals, all of it. But it is a bit of a bridge for me to understand channeling animals or channeling them from beyond the veil. It is a leap for me. So I'm sure it is a leap for some of you out there. I'm open to these things. I truly do believe that we are swimming in a much more magical world than what we think we are. And our own pre-programmed belief systems kind of prevent us from entertaining things of this nature. And I'd like to start breaking that boundary and acknowledging that it's very possible that we are connected to the animals that we have in our life, that they have a spiritual journey of their own, that they have ancestral lineages of their own, karma, things of that nature. I mean, for me, it is not something that I would dismiss. I think it's something that I've just learned today that yet again, life is much more complicated, complex than we think it is. So I'd encourage you to pick up the book, read the stories that she tells of these three individual horses and what they brought to her life and how she was virtually transformed by these horses and their messages. So not only will you be filling your own soul with profound, deep messages from beyond the veil, you will also be contributing to the Kohn Foundation, which is helping animals in the Bahamas, helping children, helping people, and the dogs have a better life. And it's this episode's getting released the week of Christmas. Ironically enough, I thought I had already done a sign off or an outro or a recap to this show, and I went through, and apparently I didn't. Or if I did, it got lost in the shuffle. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have to record a little wrap up for this episode. I recorded it, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or something of that nature. And turns out this is the episode that's going to release on Monday. It's Christmas week. It's a great time to give back. It's the time of being thankful. And hopefully it's a time of charity. And you're in a position where you could buy a book that will touch your heart and also touch the lives of other children and animals that are in need. So it's kind of great that I had to do a recap this week so I could put it out during Christmas week. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas from the Fate podcast. And, there are no accidents. That's what I'm learning. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at F.A.T.E podcast. I am getting more and more into my social media. So come join me, folks. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. And I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. And thank you for journeying with me during my podcast series while I learn and grow in my own spiritual development. And I hope others are learning and growing in their own spiritual development. And so, Merry Christmas to you all. Next week, I am going to be putting out a end of the year recap show where I'm just going to talk about my own spiritual journey, what I've been through this year, because ironically enough, I've been through yet another very trying year, very almost, well, I'll get into it in the episode, but I've had a pretty transformative year that I honestly haven't been talking about in real time because I really couldn't. But I'm now going to talk about my year and how transformative it's been. And that will come out the first week of, or the last week of Christmas, I don't know, on the next episode. So it'll be a recap. I am going to start talking a little bit more about my own life, about my own real time changes that have been happening for me since I've been doing the show. And I hope you all enjoy. It's a unique perspective. It's my own spiritual journey. It's my own awakening. And I'm going to get into that on the next episode. With that, I will see you next week on From Atheism to Enlightenment. Thank you so much for staying with me. And welcome to your fate, everyone. Merry Christmas. Bye.